Oh, say, can you hear?
Yet another red light.
Well, I'm gonna spill all
The secrets you're holding.
About the spaceships up there and the aliens down here and all history,
Which is totally fake.
I'm going to, Sue, I'm going to get into, I need to get into the downloads, because when people hear me talk about downloads, they don't quite understand. I need to explain to people how this works, because William Tompkins, the first other reference I've ever come across was reading Selected by Extraterrestrials, where someone else was talking about something that I knew as a fact was going on with me, about these intuitive downloads, psychic intuitive downloads, whatever they call them. Every day, every person is thinking about something. From you get up in the morning, you have something you have to do. You're thinking about, you have to eat breakfast, you have to get ready for work. You're thinking, you have information in your mind. You're thinking about what you're going to do at work today, what errands you have to run when you leave work, if you have to go work out, all these things you have to do. All these thoughts, you see it inside your mind. The mind is holographic. You literally see images in your mind all the time of things that you're about to do. You see it, but yet we don't think about it too much. But we see it and we simply do it. We hear it, we see it, we do it. All that information right there, there's this extra data that comes in. So I have my normal thought processes of the things that I think about on a regular basis, whether it be work, workouts, eating food, driving down the street, going to the grocery store, grocery shopping. We have our errands that we need to run. But there's this extra data coming in, and I started looking at this data. It's like, what is this going on here? Why am I thinking about something that doesn't make any sense? So I would stop for what I was doing for a second and then take a look at it and look at this data and say, okay, what is this? I started seeing things, how planets work, biological processes on planets, volcanic, eruptions, all these things going on, life forms on the planet. They kept downloading and making me aware of what was really going on at that level, which I can't get into too much detail about it right now. But basically, they're telling me about this is how the environment works, this is how life develops on planets, all these things. So all this extra data is coming in, and they can download info to me. They can tell me, like, if I'm driving down the street and someone is going to potentially cause a car accident with me, they can warn me ahead of time, and I can see an image of a car and see something and drive there, and I'm like, bam, there's that thing, and I avoid the accident. This is to the level that these downloads have gotten to, and this is the truth. We have to go up now to something more serious. Okay. When 2012 came around, things started to go in a different direction, because 2012 is different. I started getting these downloads that I have to now act on this thing that they told me about, this farming system. So I decided now that I was going to make an attempt to do this very thing that the extraterrestrial female had asked me to do. She goes, you have to research crops, you have to research soil, how to grow plants, because she said to me that when the planet's environment starts to change, that the crops are going to be destroyed by weather and rainfall out in the fields, and that we have to learn how to grow the crops up in the center of the city, inside buildings, indoors. All farming systems are now going from outdoors to indoors to secure the food supply closer to the city. Okay? Which means that you can protect your food supply without having damaged crops and shortages in food and things like that. So I decided now that I was going to act on it. So by the time 2012 came around, I went ahead and got some green onions out of a grocery store and walked inside my backyard, and I planted the first crops and stuck the green onions down the ground to watch what was going to happen. And they grew very easily, and I didn't have any problems with them. And I planted some potatoes. The potatoes grew, and the potatoes all died out. And I had no idea that eventually I had to become a master gardener and really study how these things work. So I told a friend of mine that I was friends with that I needed somewhere to experiment with this. So I said, can you talk to your parents and find out if we can start growing some food in the backyard, a certain type of greens, kale, broccoli, all these things. I need to study it because the extraterrestrials kept downloading to me. They wanted to teach me about how insects and animals and plants and birds interact with the environment and how this thing is in balance. So we started growing the crops in his yard, and I told his father right there, and I said, I'm working on something really big. So he goes, what's that? I said, I asked your son to start growing the crops in the yard because I'm studying something. I want to see how they're going to grow, what will happen to them if the insects will attack them, eat off the crop, destroy the crop, what would happen. So I went over there about a couple of months later and saw that the broccoli were like about 2 feet tall, and we're having really good crops growing, and some of the other crops were dying off and insects were attacking the crops. Some of them had diseases, and I'm like, this is not as easy as I think, as I thought it would be. So I then went over to talk to another friend of mine and went over to his house and started trying to talk to him and convince him to start growing some crops. And I saw that he had some kale plants in the backyard, and I saw the kale plants and they were in really good shape. And I was like, man, this is unbelievable. I've never actually seen a real kale plant that's almost 2 feet tall that was really healthy. And I was like, whoa, look at this. So he said to me, let's build a garden, put a garden in. So I got to practice now for the first time how this really works. So we started researching, watching a lot of videos on YouTube of just people gardening and learning what to do and what not to do. And we ended up making this massive garden inside the backyard that produced some of the best tasting, potent crops that were really nutrient dense and tasted really good. They were 100% organic. We used organic soil. So I learned the whole system. The insects came in, the butterflies laid their eggs, the caterpillars hatched, and the caterpillars were feeding on about 25% of the crops, and then lizards came in and started eating the insects, and then the ladybugs came in, and we were sitting here watching this whole thing. It started attracting birds and even started attracting rats, but we had to run those out really, really fast because we didn't want the rats inside the yard. So during that time, my friend discovered microgreens and said, check this out, and he started growing some sprouts. And I said, so we came across microgreens, and we found out that the restaurants were using microgreens inside Canada, that there was a Canadian guy up north growing these microgreens. And I said, okay, here's my chance, because you have to grow these indoors. So I'm supposed to get this project going right here, because this is the beginning of developing a Type 1 civilization. And Type 1, I'll explain, we've all heard about Type 1 civilizations, and I'll tell you how Type 1 was defined to me by these aliens. We've heard that Type 1 is about using all the energy resources of the planet, the electrical energy of the sun, all this stuff right here. That is not the definition of Type 1 from what I understand. Type 1 is a state of mind of individual people on the planet. How they feel, how they think, how they live. Are they free? Do they have individual free will? Do they have access to technologies? Do they have access to life extension? Is the environment clean? Are they colonizing the solar system? Are the people on the planet fully involved with all the space programs with their governments that they elected? So Type 1 civilizations is about people that elect their government and every single thing going on in government on the planet with its environment, with its energy sources, resources that it uses to run the planet, colonization of solar systems, colonization of galaxies, all these things involved. That's what Type 1's about. Type 1 means every person on the planet is completely involved with everything that's going on. That's what Type 1 means. Okay? So Type 1, how it's defined on the internet, Type 1 civilization, I do not recognize that. That means nothing to me, because that's not that you just say, okay, a Type 1 civilization utilizes all the energy resources of its sun, of its star, to run the entire planet. Yet there's no discussion about how the people feel, how the people live, how long do they live, what type of energy sources that they're using on the planet, what do they eat, how they live, are they free, is the planet in balance with the ecosystem? None of that's being discussed. Right? Type 1 civilization is defined as the energy output, utilizing all the energy resource of the sun. That is not what a Type 1 civilization is about. That's not the way, that's not how it was brought to my attention. And I'm sure that others out there may argue and disagree. But I have to just tell you what I know.
Say, can you finally
Start telling us the truth.
Protect our civil liberties and
all war?